it then? Have we got there?
Finally, we've done it. We can now condemn
Congratulations.
the world. Congratulations. A little bit late, but not late forever. I'm so tired. We had such great problems logging on. Over to you, boys.
Over to you, Pete.
Well,
Pete's during the practice session here. Pete's actually run through and has actually practiced his entire monologue and his rant. So, Pete, I think you ought to go off. Really, it sounded good.
The first thing is, let us congratulate the people of America. You are the most amazing people on the world. Look what great pleasure you have given us. You have not only managed to get a Donald, but you've actually got him to lay eggs as well. So the idea for today was not really to to shove salt into the wounds of the poor, long-suffering Americans, but to actually say, well, each one of us has got a few things to say about it, about what we feel, and hopefully, if anyone wants to come in. And as with this program was meant to be called the Coup Klux Klan.
That's a pun which doesn't work so well in the spoken word, really, isn't it?
Well, it can't be a real coup, just like champagne. It's got to come from the right area of the country. Of course, with the Americans now suffering, whilst you two have a rant each, and if any of our friends here, we haven't got great big strategy worked out. If any of our friends want to come in and join our rant, of course, do not rub salt into the poor Americans. Of course, if they happen to be black, they would have been welcomed with roses. And it breaks my heart, actually, that one of the policemen has died in America. But what's ridiculous is his name.
Which is?
I think it's something Sick Nick. But of course, we will not make any puns. It's bad taste to make puns of any of these things. But I pass it over to you whilst I leave. And I'd like to share a couple of videos and things like that with my friends who I know are going to be condemning me later on. And we as writers of satire now, the person here with Dr. Pete Kalu said to us, I give up writing satire after the latest shenanigans of Trump. Perhaps you could expand on that, Mr. Kalu.
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, we want leaders who make some sense and who have the look of leadership, of coherence, of depth, of sagacity, of an understanding of the world, of people of the world, you know? And it's for us as writers to come up with these absurd characters, not the goddamn electorate, okay? But somehow the electorate has wanted to identify the most idiotic, stupid, vain, venal, idiosyncratic, egotistical, narcissist. And you know, there are a lot of narcissists in the world I move in. There's narcissists to the left, narcissists to the right. But you know, this guy, you know, the narcissist. And somehow he came to power. But let me tell you this, Tariq. We are all guilty. We all played our part in this. So don't try to look like you're not part of this, of the people in the dock. Because, yes, we're all guilty. We were entertained by Donald Trump. When he came on that show, at the end of which, I can only remember the end, he goes, "You're fired." You know, it was fun. I loved the guy. I laughed as he fired left, right, and center. You know, he came in with he looked rather like he'd been blown up by some kind of air pump. He's full of himself, you know, "You're fired." You know, it was a great show. And the other politicians were so dull. All the people around him were so dull. And I thought, yeah, this guy, you know, he's going to give me at least some entertainment. I did not know he had the DNA for a dictatorship, for Mussolini within him. I swear I did not. This is impossible. No. You know, I'm getting too fired up.
No, we've got to keep daughters out of all this thing. Keep
But you know,
daughters.
what of the future? What of the future? You know, if this man had managed to get another 4 years, you know, I would hold very little hope for this generation that just came down the stairs. You
Hey,
know,
listen, the man did get 4 more years. He's called Biden. For God's sake, what difference does it make to the rest of the world? The greater the chaos in America, is that bad for us? I mean, look at them all. A settler colony built on the bones of Africans, of Native Americans. Why the hell should the world give a damn other than your misery is not necessarily our misery? Now, but having, you know, oh, somebody's saying, calm down, Dad. I think that's what the point was. That's okay. That's okay.
So, I mean, what about the idea then that the worse things are in America for Americans and for Europe, the better they are for the rest of the world? I mean, Biden will be a lot more active abroad, I think. The protectionists like Trump retreat and commit their crimes on their own people. Biden will be out there kicking ass internationally.
But the point is,
possibly for the world in general, Trump losing, not such a good thing after all.
well, we wouldn't want to wish the worst on the American people, but I can't help but actually saying, well, hey, how about, do you remember that crazy country called Vietnam or Laos or Cambodia or Afghanistan? You brought democracy to Iraq. You brought democracy to Iran, to Venezuela, to Chile, in little Grenada. I mean, we don't want to remember that. But Melvin, as writers of fiction, we create fictional satirical worlds. America has done it for us. America is amazing. This settler colony, if this settler colony has done brilliant. But let me please share with you a couple of moments of what these wonderful Americans are and how they treat, you know, the aspects of revolution.
How long are these moments? I've known your moment to go on for quite a while.
A few seconds.
Okay, fine.
A few seconds. What I'd like to do is to play a little clip which a friend sent us for this, and then I would like to share it with you. Hold on a minute. Oh God, let me share this with you. I'm going to share my screen with you, and then we can have a go.
We're now in BTEC technology class. Everyone bear with us.
Bear with us. It's okay. We're not getting paid for this. Share the screen.
We're certainly not now.
Right. Okay. Well, we're not getting paid now. What I have to do is to...
Not much chance of that in the future either, I don't think, really.
Listen. Oops. Oh. Anyway, that wasn't the one I wanted to share, but it's wonderful.
Well, there we go.
It was not the one I wanted to share, but look.
That's fine, Tariq. We just roll whatever happens.
What we would like to say.
I'll tell you what, Spirit, in the spirit of the recent American coup and insurrection, I think that was just perfect.
It was absolutely perfect.
Absolutely spot on. All it needed was a hairy head and a couple of horns sticking out.
Well, we're coming there. Don't worry.
Are we moving into satiring documentaries?
We are going to go here, and I am going to play.
We are channeling Trump. And
we are going to play this video for you, but I don't know how to play the damn wretched video.
Well, put it to one side for now, then.
Well, for now,
get on with your rants, Tariq.
Well, get on with my rants. Well,
yeah,
I can't get on with my rants because one of the things I wanted to ask all of us and all our writers out there is this: to what extent if the satire is taking the contradictions and conflicts to an extreme end, what do we do when the end becomes extreme in front of us? What do we do? Do we bother, or do we take Peter Kalu's type of an attitude? Pete, why don't you rant for a few minutes while I sort out?
I think that what has happened is this moment where we've had to bear with Trump for 4 years is a call to reason. It's a call to put to one side now fancy rhetoric, to put to one side appeal to emotion, and to turn to cold, rational debate, to return to civility, to return to listening and attempting to understand what all communities have to say and have to feel about a situation, and to attempting to reason and to use logic and reason to further the goals of the world in its entirety, whether it be global warming, whether it be the diminishing resources, whether it be inequalities across the world. The age of rhetoric has been killed by Trump. We will no longer fall for demagogues. We will no longer be voting in these flashy entertainers like Boris Johnson, Donald Trump. We will see a return to the grey men and the grey women. And if you look across the world, those who've done well at handling the COVID pandemic have been, I won't call them grey, but have been the reasoned voices. The New Zealand Prime Minister, the German Prime Minister, those who have sometimes had a scientific background rather than an entertainment background, and who have been able to marshal cold fact and reason and persuade by dint of the strength of the argument rather than the passion with which it's been put across. That's my view.
Well, I'm not sure that this is the time for us to let go. This is the time for the people of the world to ensure that the misery inflicted upon them by endless stream of whether it was the Uncle Toms like Obama, or whether this monstrosity that's coming at us, Biden and Harris, Zionist murder machine defenders to the core. There is absolutely nothing the people of the world and progressive writers should forgive this for. And what it has proven, actually, you mentioned all these countries, Pete. What about China? What about Vietnam? And North Korea, for that matter, and others, and Cuba. They have done remarkable well at fighting. But what we are seeing is the internal conflict of white supremacy. It can't come to terms with the fact that not only has the virus defeated it, its own plague, its own arrogance of Britain, of America, has defeated them. And in a way, in a revolutionary...
Well, Tariq, it's just not true, is it? They're not defeated. They're still very strong, aren't they? They're still flying high. America is still the richest country in the world. The fact that the Trump farce came about with this ridiculous little badly policed protest, which is all it was, really. You know, that was a badly policed protest. If they'd have policed it properly, they'd have never gotten in. I've been to so many demos where, you know, if we could have gotten into Parliament or Number 10 or this, of course we would have done. You'd have gotten in there like anything, wouldn't you? But normally you're not allowed. I mean, the interesting thing about it isn't really about America's place on the global stage, which will be unperturbed by Trump.
Oh, come on.
No, Trump won't make any difference. He won't make any difference to America's place in the world. America is in a long-term decline, which will continue anyway. The most interesting thing about it, particularly in terms of, white supremacy, was how the police handled them. They clearly thought that a bunch of far-right, heavily armed white supremacists weren't any threat at all. And they practically cuddled them as they came in. You know, I mean, it wasn't anything dangerous at all. I mean, all those guys, for all their arms, they didn't fire a single shot. The only shot was actually fired by the police. As Biden actually said, of course, if it had been a Black Lives Matter protest, it would have been an extremely different matter. It is significant that America does actually see no threat. The powers that be in America see no threat from the white right, which is an alarming thing. But in terms of global things, this is just a minor comic interlude, and America will carry on with its long-term decline. It's of no real significance at all. Of course, the only thing that we have to see is which way is it going to go? Is this the end of Trumpism, or in fact, are they going to bounce back?
Well, I disagree with everything you've said, Melvin, and I disagree with everything that Tariq has said. But you said so many things before I last spoke that I'm not sure I'll be able to attack them all in the time that we've got available.
Just pick your favorites, Pete.
Okay. Well, I don't think this is about America's decline. I think this is
No.
I think it is about the fact that the demographics of America are changing, and black folk, non-white folk, are becoming more numerous and will soon be a majority in America. And so it's not about actually America's decline globally, which is the argument that Tariq and to some extent Mr. Burgess presents. No, it's about the decline.
No, that wasn't my. I have to point in that wasn't my argument at all. That wasn't my argument at all. I'm saying that it's not part of the decline. It's just a blip. America is declining, but what's happened with Trump and all the rest of it makes no difference at all.
Okay,
what you're saying about what you were saying, I agree with. So please do go on.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Melvin. And what we're feeling here is not just in America, but in Europe too. And that's why I'm concentrating, Tariq, on Europe. It's not to do with the global scenario. That's why I wasn't touching upon that. And that's why I put to one side as irrelevant all your other comments about China, Cuba, etc., etc. What I'm focusing on here is on the decline of white supremacy within Europe and America. And I argue that it is based on the demography. It's based on the numbers, the numerical balance of power. And you've seen it in Georgia. And it's no coincidence that this invasion of the Capitol happened just after Georgia voted for the Democrats.
That's absolutely true in America. But what makes you think that white supremacy is in the decline in Europe?
Because demographically it is. Because where I stand
in Europe. In Europe, in Europe, the white majority is still enormous, surely.
Pete, what this shows is contrary to the decline of white supremacy, it's a fight back by white supremacy. Melvin, I don't agree with you at all. It was a failure of police. If a donkey in my village in Pakistan knew tens of thousands of people were going to descend who had declared what they were going to do, the police were organized by some element of the state with the full knowledge of what they were doing. Police doesn't work like that. So
you think the police let them in?
Factions of the police let them in. I have been at the receiving end of enough police batons, CS gas, all sorts of other stuff in my life.
Listen, guys, let me say this. These people who went into the Capitol, they went in there to smash democracy, believing that democracy was some tablet, some physical object that they could find in the middle of this Capitol building. They'd probably read too much Harry Potter or something, okay? They'd gone in there, where is the magic tablet? We're going to seize it. Yeah. And of course, it doesn't exist. That's why they could wander around. Everyone knew they weren't going to be able to find it there.
They looked, once they got in there, they looked like a bunch of school kids on a visit to the museum who'd lost their teacher. Did you see the unfortunate woman who got maced? Did you see that one?
Well, let's hear from her.
I tried to step in and they maced me. I was trying to have a revolution.
Now there, Mr. Miller.
There was no major political movements going on there. I don't believe for a second, Tariq, that this was because the police, the American, do not see danger in white right-wing supremacists.
Okay, let us now hear from that. Let us hear from that woman that you've just mentioned. Okay, let us hear from her. This is the one you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, go on then.
Let's hear her.
What happened to you?
I got maced.
You got maced? And what happened? You were trying to go inside the Capitol?
I made it like a foot inside and they pushed me out and they maced me.
What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Elizabeth. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee.
And why did you want to go in?
We're storming the Capitol. It's a revolution.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, QED. We were having a revolution and I got maced.
I mean, but look, we're looking at white supremacy.
You know what amazes me is that this wave of primarily white people, there were some deluded black people among this crowd as well, actually, but this wave of white people got into this most revered building in the United States. When I struggle sometimes to get even into a museum without being followed by security left, right, and center. I went to, may I say it? I went to a very prestigious museum in England, and with a little laptop. And I'd got no further than like 20 yards when a security came up to me and said, "You need to leave that in the lockers down in the basement." And I looked around, and all these white people wandering around with huge bags, not being stopped. And here was little me with an even smaller case, being directed to the basement. I thought, this is the disparity. This is the white privilege. The white folk can wander around wherever they want.
And I think it was exactly mirrored with what happened at the Capitol the other day. As to say, if it had been the Black Lives Matter thing, they'd have had 7 shades of shite trashed out of them. But as it was, they were just a harmless bunch of normal, ordinary, everyday, heavily armed white supremacists. So we don't need that many police there.
The question is, I mean, P, I hope you weren't wearing that hat of yours when you went into this prestigious...
You don't like this hat? I'll give you another one.
No. That's
better.
Yeah, definitely. If you were wearing that hat,
Chloe, if you're watching, just come and stop him, please.
Yeah, I mean, if that were wearing that hat, I'm sure nothing would have happened. All right, so let's go back in time a little bit. We're going on and on and on about this Trump character. Was he an aberration? I don't think so. It's the complete logic of one section of America. But the point is it not? Is there any great future for humanity with this American machine being intact as it is?
Well, the American machine is intact and it will remain intact. I mean, for a good while yet, they still remain completely dominant in a military sense, I remember some time ago when Britain was sort of speeding up its decline, and I was thinking to myself, well, that'll be quite a good thing because people living in other parts of the world won't be trashed around by the British military so much. But of course, as someone immediately pointed out to me, they'll cut down on an awful lot of spending before they cut down on the tanks and the arms and so forth. So I think it'll be a long time before you see the American military machine withdrawing its hordes. And of course, Biden's going to very much welcome the very much role of policing the world. So
I resist this extrapolation into the worldwide picture because I still feel that we've not yet got the precise dialectic that has occurred. What has occurred is a black man became the president of America.
He wasn't black.
Obama, come on, I'm not playing semantic games. We all know what we mean, right? He became American president, and the reaction was shock, horror, circling of wagons, the last throw of the dice by those who believed this should never have occurred. It is a complete dialectical reaction. I'm surprised, Tariq, that as someone trained in Marxism, you haven't picked up this dialectic, this action consequence, this action reaction.
The dialectic I saw of Obama coming to power is that the greatest number of people killed by drone under his watch, the unleashing of an American empire without anything any different to any other president. What Obama proved was it doesn't matter what the color of your skin, and I will say also gender. If you are heading an empire, then it is the empire that creates the moment of history, not the emperor. The emperor himself is also a slave of that empire.
The error here, Tariq, is that you missed the nuance. You missed the nuance because things change. Things change internally. There are internal contradictions that work their way through. So Obama came, okay? The reaction was Trump. But what the forces that gave Obama power to come to be the president of the United States have not disappeared, and we have now reassembled. And Georgia showed that. We know how we can come together and acquire power, just as the civil rights movement showed how we could come together and acquire power. And okay, there is a long-term struggle within America as to the direction of that America takes politically across the world. And we can talk about empires. And yes, I accept your arguments around empire and the American empire. But this is not to rule out that there are changes that will occur, that do occur, that have occurred. And those changes, despite Trump is the interregnum. Trump is the intermediate. He's not the full stop. Trump is the paroxysm, the last gasp of a discredited white supremacy ideology. And what is to come will be something more progressive, something that will be better for the whole world.
Well, whether it will be better for the whole world is in doubt, for a good while, I'd say. But I do agree with you that Trump was the last fling, hopefully. Indeed, in many ways, I think that the whole popularist movement around the world is the last fling of the old white men. You know, that would be a nice thing. Of course, that doesn't mean to say on the global stage that things will be any different as far as the American empire and the European forces are concerned and so forth. But I think you're quite right to point out the Georgia vote. That was the most, in fact, that was the most significant thing, rather than the pathetic little splish splash at Capitol. That was much more significant. That you know, politically as well for the next 4 years has put all three strands of power into the hands of the Democrat, which is going to change things internally, anyway.
I mean, you know, this is incredible wishful thinking, and at your ages, with more than a century between you, unlike me, I am surprised that you have any faith in the democratic process of the empire. Look, it didn't matter what happened in Rome. The Roman Empire crushed. Yes, there are nuances. Yes, there are little things.
But Tariq, the thing is, that's in a long-term sense, that's true. Okay. But in a short and medium-term sense, these things can make huge difference to actual people's lives, you know. And
which people, Melvin?
Well,
Which people?
Americans, for example.
The settler.
It might also, if, as Pete suggests, that you know, black people and Hispanic people start claiming power in America, then you can assume that might make some difference into how America uses its power abroad as well, because people who have been at the receiving end of American white supremacy in America might be a little more reluctant to start doling it out outside. They might not be, but the fact of the matter is that it can change people's lives. It can change their life chances. It can change all sorts of things. In the long term, it's not going to stop America from declining, and I'm sure there are going to be plenty of explosive and implosive, dangerous actions that happen then. But it is not true to suggest that the changes within the democratic system of America, however doomed it might be in the long term, make no difference to people's actual real lives.
I mean, I'm taking too much of the time here, but I think that to have faith within the process that has been set up, which has built on the basis of slavery, of settler colonialism, to think that will be the vehicle of change is only throwing meat to the wolves. The point is
not the vehicle of change, but it will create some change. That's a different thing.
Of course, there will be some change. There has to be some change. But the most important aspect, we couldn't script a scenario like this. They would laugh our books out of the thing. The point is that if
can I make another point though, Tariq? In terms of this idea of stasis, of immovability, of structural rigidity. The thing is that what I saw with this Capitol invasion and what I saw even when Trump came into power was that institutions have no strength in themselves and of themselves. Constitutions have no strength in and of themselves. It is people who execute these constitutions, these institutions. And what we saw with Trump was he needed just one person on his side to effect a complete takeover. And that person was the Vice President, Pence. We all saw how it all came down to that point. Would Pence block it or would he not? And Pence in that moment did not.
Constitutionally, Pence didn't have that power, though. He said quite clearly. I mean, you know.
Yeah, he said that. He could have said something else. So, but what
he
I'm
could
saying,
have said something else, but that wouldn't have given him that power.
Yeah. But hear me out. That yes, because you see, Trump did a very clever thing. He went to the Supreme Court and packed that. So it's always people. You know, you want to talk about law, what the law gives, what the law doesn't give. Somebody's got to interpret it. You went to Supreme Court, pack that. So my argument is this, that no matter what the institution, no matter what the constitution, it is people. And it is Churchill. I'm quoting Churchill now, Winston Churchill, right? He said the new empires are the empires of the mind. Now, he may have been we may not like the guy for many of the things he did or thought, but this I felt was very true. Empires of the mind. When white supremacy is an empire of the mind, it's how we think about the world, how we interpret the world. So, if we get change, if we change the way in which people understand the world, if we change the way in which people think about black and white, and if we change the way in which people think about race or the idea of race and racism, then we will change the way the world evolves. And in that way, yes, I'm an optimist, but I'm not a hopeless optimist. I see the younger generation. They're coming down the stairs right now into our living rooms. They're going to take over from us, yeah? And they have hope. You saw the Black Lives Matter movement. Who was out there with the Black Lives Matter movement in Manchester, in London, in Lagos, across the world? Who was out there? It was the young people. The young people are going to take up this baton, and they, with their new ideas, with their more progressive understanding of the world, can make that change, both here in Europe, where I stand, where we all stand, and also in America. So, Tariq, I don't accept that the American empire is some static thing like a tank that just moves forwards, you know? It's a thing that we construct in our minds. And as minds change, so the understanding that America has of itself can change.
Well, certainly, Pete, it's very true that the major battle is the battle of ideas. If an idea takes root, it can't be defeated. Was it Bobby Sands who said you can't put an idea against a wall and shoot it? There's a great proverb from my part of the world. A slave went into the market carrying a necklace of his chain around him, a chain around his neck. And he went to a shopkeeper and he said, "Look, how wonderful my master is. He's given me this necklace to wear." The master found out and he took the chain off. He said, "There's no need for it now." It's true. Once our brains and our minds and our ideas are imprisoned, then there's no need for the prison walls as such. Now, on the one hand, I agree.
Great illustration. That's a great illustration. And part of the movement that I have as a writer, part of the movement that I'm involved in, is that I will not accept the term slave anymore. I will say an enslaved person.
Okay.
Because I don't accept that this person carries this noun, that their whole identity is bound up with the idea of slave. No, they may be an enslaved person, but they're not a slave. You know, that's something that the master has come down and tried to impose on them. So, yeah, I take your point with the idea that once you've internalized it, you're stuffed. I won't use the other word because we're alive.
Therefore, you are right that the change, and yes, of course, Pete, otherwise, why are we writers? What on earth are we writing any stories for, if not to be engaged in the battle of ideas through the realm of stories, through the world of stories? And why do we go into the conflicts and contradictions and the trials and tribulations of the human being, the body as well as the soul and the mind? Why do we do that? We do that because we ourselves are pained, and we can see the pain of others, and the process of change of the others, of the pain of others, is to be able to unite and use whatever tools we've got. That is all true. But the institutions of the police, of the army, of the air force, of the bureaucracy, they are not people, they are machines. They will just as easily imprison their own mothers. They will just as easily put your tanks over people lying on the ground. They don't care. The question is, they're the oppressive machinery of the state. The state is not a human being. The state might be held together by us human beings, but it's not a human being. The state of the empire in itself, I can think of good things that America has given me. Certainly genes. That was a great invention of the America. If they don't fit me very well, that's probably the shape of my
Actually, they were tents, you know. They were tents jeans originally. The material was tent material. And somebody cut them up and made a pair of trousers out of them. And that's how jeans took off. Small anecdote.
That's okay. But I'm going to finish the last sentence. Then you gentlemen continue, because I'm off to get something from France. It won't take me very long to get it and come back. But my concluding point here is, and I think Melvin's been very quiet for a bit, that as writers, Pandemicus was set up to look at ideas. How should we look at the current situation and bring it within our writing, bring it for those fantastic youth and young people that will follow us, and maybe some of them will listen to three old men ranting on a Facebook page and say, hey, at least one of them said something half decent. Which one? I'll leave for you. Now, Melvin, I'm off to get something from France. It won't take me very long. And please, it's about your turn to reflect on what the rant that Peter has had or just I've had.
Oh, well, I wonder what Tariq's bringing back from France.
He's gone to fill up his wine glass. That's
He's
clearly
gone to fill up his wine glass. I think that's what he does. Yes, except he usually drinks Rioja, so I doubt whether it will be from France. Yeah, I mean, you know, Peter, I didn't have much to say. I agreed with what you said. Then I think it is things are changing. I mean, I suppose it's an interesting argument, isn't it? This the two of you, you know, you on the one hand talking about ideas changing thing, and Tariq as the old Marxist that he is, and the old materialist that he is. Really, it'll all come back to the workings of the economy and capital and the state as a machine, and how those things might change. And I'd have to say, I haven't got much of a rant to say about it, really. I don't think either of you are wrong. I do think that these machines will continue so long as it is under our capitalist system. But I also do think that things can be changed for the better, even within it. I'm not such a hardcore lefty that I don't think things can be changed like that. I mean, the issue of addressing it in terms of writing is a complete bastard. I have to say, political writing is the hardest thing of all. One of the all sorts of reasons why it's hard. I've tried it myself one time with some success occasionally. You could talk about personal politics. Novels tend to deal with individual lives and relationships. So you could talk about how politics inflict on individuals, but to try and bring these larger pictures in is extremely difficult in novels which do focus on individuals. One of the all sorts of problems there. One of the big problems, of course, is that people usually come to politics with fixed ideas in the first place. And as soon as you're trying to use a work of fiction to present your ideas rather to explore ideas, it just turns to clay, doesn't it? Everyone can, you're just using it as a vehicle to rant, and it doesn't work. Novels and fiction ask questions much better than it's presents answers.
May I pick up on that then, Melvin?
Please do.
That one of the things that I agree with you that, because of the concentration on the individual, certainly in narrative forms such as novels, short stories, you usually got a character, one or two characters. It's not a form that people read collectively, particularly, however much one might argue that it is. It's quite a one-on-one experience. You're reading the mind of the author or the mind of the character in your own space and time. But what it does sometimes that I think is useful is it can take you into the minds of characters, and in so far as there is a political dimension that impacts on a character's feelings or thoughts or senses, then that articulation of the thinking or the feeling becomes interesting. And there's a moment sometimes in some novels that you go, oh, you thought that too. I thought I was alone in thinking that.
That's absolutely true. That's how we tend to write politics in novels. You focus on it's people politics, person politics, the politics of living your individual life, and it works very well like that. It can be done other ways. I mean, Orwell in Animal Farm and in 1984 actually talked about systems.
Okay,
and so it can be done. It's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. It can be done, and I mean, it's interesting to note that the two forms that he used then were science fiction and fable. If you are actually talking about current society, it falls to bits. I remember when I was at school, one of our A-level books was by a guy called C.P. Snow, and it was one of the most turgid, wretched books I'd ever read. But it really was. I can't even remember the name of the thing, but really it was exploring the bureaucracy around the invention of the nuclear bomb, and it was not an exciting thing because, of course, the nuclear bomb was born out of that political bureaucracy. That they were the ones that carried it through once the political will had been provided. But it doesn't make for a terribly exciting book.
Can I? Yeah, I accept that. I mean, one can take a theme, like the civil rights movement, and then write something. One story that I've written recently is, just an individual who was involved in the civil rights movement. Instead of seeing the civil rights movement as this sort of huge macro picture, you take one individual, and go in there and telling that story. It's a story that may not have been said before, and so just the bringing to voice of people who don't have a voice or aren't heard in literature.
Giving a voice, you can give a voice to people, and I mean, of course, that's an incredibly important thing, which writers have done with oppressed peoples, all over the world. And it is the thing that novels do very well, because you can get into someone's head and you can say, this is the experience that character is having, and it can really open a lot of doors for the reader. So that's the main one that people do. The other one, of course, is, as I say, fable and science fiction. It could work like that. Short pieces work with satire sometimes, but it's a very tricky thing. I don't think that fable is explored enough in political writing. I'd like to see, have you noticed in Animal Farm how Orwell set up the animals to represent fairly clear political figures in the Russian Revolution there, and it was engaging and interesting. And it also, what he did really, I suppose, was strip it all away down to some bare bones and make, out of all the political fuss and noise and so forth, he managed to describe the fundamentals of what was going on in a very lucid way. And I don't think people try that quite often enough. Though I read an interesting book quite recently by Ian McEwan called Cockroach, which talks really about I think it's about Boris Johnson and the current business, which that's how I read it anyway. I don't even know when it was out, so it could be hopelessly wrong. In which it's a reversal of metamorphosis, in which one day a cockroach wakes up and it's transformed into the body of a prime minister. Okay?
I like the concept.
Transformed into the body of a prime minister, and he gradually sort of manages to use this great slab of meat in his mouth and where's me mandibles and all the rest of it. And basically it's a plot by the cockroaches to take over the cabinet in order that they can work politics so badly that everything decays and falls to bits, which is great for the cockroaches. And I did read it as a satire on the current Conservative government. And if it was that, it was brilliant, but I can't be certain because I don't know. So, using fable, it works. It can work. It can draw up these parallels. Cockroach wasn't such a great book as Animal Farm, not by a long chalk, I'd have to say. And but yeah, that's what I would say, Tariq. If you want to start doing it, don't try and talk about Trump and America and the actual details of stuff which are going on, because as Pete pointed out quite rightly, if you wrote the shit which has just happened and forget it. No one would believe you. You'd be laughed out of town. But you can use fable. You could turn these events into something like that, and you can reveal things going on and give angles on it, which can be quite enlightening.
It's true. I had a couple of points I wanted to say, and perhaps I can share one small story. And that is that I've been trying. I wrote a story called "You Stink" about the Lebanese crisis, where I was in Beirut at the time. When I came back home from drinking in one of the bars of Hamra, which is an area in Beirut. In those days, the rubbish wasn't collected. There were just piles of shit everywhere. It stank like nobody's business. And these arsehole blokes were going around putting bins on fire in middle of high-rise blocks. And as I was trying to cross the road, a wedding party came up with loads of teenagers. Why at that time at night, I don't know, sticking their heads out of the car, going up this very fast very fast cars up a hill where you don't know what's around the corner. So I couldn't move forward. The footpath was full of shit, of the uncollected bags of rubbish. I couldn't go on the road of the suicidal teenagers. So I sat down on the road, on the pavement. And at that moment, I thought I heard the rubbish swear at me. You shouldn't have come to this country. What you're doing here? And I started laughing. I said, wow, a talking dump. So I actually went back and I wrote the story where the rubbish came alive. And because I'd called the rubbish dump Pierre, and once it got published, and you can read it, it's on the Satirist, called You Stink.
We'll put it
I
in.
actually, eh?
I mean, that's good.
Well, I was about to
got
come
this.
to my conclusion. I was about to come to the conclusion. The conclusion was that I've now, I mean, not the conclusion of the story, but I got attacked by quite a few people there. Why did I call the rubbish dump Pierre? And when I said, well, you know, it's so ridiculous. You know, you guys have called this man Pierre, but you haven't got a per in Arabic, so it'll be Pierre. But anyway, that wasn't my point. The point there was that I've had lots of friends from Lebanon who've telling me that I've got to do an update of that story, especially with some of my own shenanigans of trying to get money out of the Lebanese banks. And one of the stories I remember is, you know, as you get older, we want please, for those of you who've got weak constitutions, put your fingers in your ears. When you get to Peter Kalu and Melvin's age, some of us gents are prone for colonoscopy. I won't go and describe.
Speak for yourself, Tariq.
Okay.
Talking about elderly weaknesses, I need to go to the loo. Excuse me.
Okay, whilst he goes to the loo, so. Well, my point here was, Pete, I was looking for a concept of trying to finish off the story in a modernized sense. And I remembered a doctor telling me, and an old man came from the mountains of Lebanon, and he had a camera inserted for the colonoscopy, and the doctor calmly told him, this is what's going on in your stomach. He goes, well, how can I see inside it? He goes, there's a light bulb, just, you know, there's a light before the camera, which is in your stomach. He goes, the camera that you've put up my backside, up my ass into my stomach. He goes, yes. He goes, well, the reason I can't stop laughing, at my age, we still don't have electricity in my village. And there's you put light up my ass. So what I was trying to work out is how to put that within the frame of a satire that really our ruling classes
Modernity.
And maybe,
you know,
we invite our writers to come and share. Perhaps now that you're back, Melvin, you didn't miss anything. I was just referring.
You know, just a story about a camera going up his ass,
yes,
or somebody else's ass.
Yeah, and why? And anyway, so here is a comment.
Go on then. Okay.
Yeah, the way that they waltzed in, they just waltzed in, and they didn't know what to do after that, because there was no, like I say, it's as if they were expecting to find the arch demon or the archangel or whatever, and like you say, Jonah, make some grand speech, but it was nothing. It was just feet up, a couple of selfies.
Yeah, I think they were really surprised that they got in there.
Yeah,
I don't think they were expecting to get in, or maybe they were expecting the Donald to turn up himself and lead them all to glory.
He did say he was going to turn up, didn't he? He said, "I'll be marching with you." But
yeah, once the heat was on, the Don was gone.
Well, the other point is that, you know, we think, you know, let us not count the chicks before the roosters laid the hen, as I would like to say. The process of the struggle of the fascist reclamation of America is far from over. There is no victory in Biden coming in. It's actually setting the globe. Hitler didn't win with the majority, overwhelming majority. As the America declines, history teaches us that the fascist forces are going to reorganize, refight. Now the question is, Pete, can they be defeated? And those of us who think
time is against them. The demographics is against them. They are fighting a losing battle. It's like water trying to run uphill. It ain't going to happen easily. In fact, it ain't going to happen at all. We are.
I mean, I hope you are right. But history shows that the slaughter machine can very easily alter the dynamics as well.
I mean, I suppose the scary thing about America is how close Trump got to staying in, how close he got to staying in, which means that there are an awful lot of people in America who like him. And whilst some of them like him because they're so bored of the grey politicians that you mentioned, Pete, and they like a bit of colour. I mean, I know people on the left who like Johnson. You know, well, he's refreshing, isn't he? He's change and all the rest of it. But so that's quite a scary thing. I mean, and the hope, I suppose, is that this ridiculous shambles at the Capitol is going to put people off. This is what all the commentators are saying. Is it wishful thinking? We shall see. So, listen, guys, I have to go quite soon.
I think we all have to go. The scary thing is that Biden can be coming to power. That's what's scary about America.
Biden is going to be probably quite good for people living in America, but not great for people around the world. I mean, he's certainly sympathetic to the Black Lives Movement over there, and I think he might advance that in America. But for people around in the Middle East, he's not going to be great.
There may be more co-option for the masses. There's only future lies in a relentless struggle. Just because they get a few more coconuts in power, whether it's the commander-in-chief or whether it's the head of military, will make no difference. But anyway, Pete...
I reject that analysis, of course. I reject the analysis of Melvin Burgess. I reject the analysis of Tariq Mahmood. I believe that Biden will show a new turn in American politics, a turn that is informed by the progressive politics and values of the new burgeoning Black population of America. We are going to see something much better than Trump. Trump will be a small spot in the rearview mirror of our engine of progress.
I think...
Tariq, do you believe Mr. Kalu when he says...
No, not one slight bit, to be honest with you. I do not believe for 1 minute.
I think he's trying to stir it up, isn't he?
The greatest thing that could
stuck in the porridge on the bottom of the pot, and we're not having it.
I wish the people of America the best. The best they can do is get rid of the rest of the shite that's been ruling them and come and join humanity and stop being the egotistical white supremacist that they are. But on that note, perhaps we should...
On that warm note to the people of America.
Anyway, thank you very much, America.
Last one, put my in the oven.
You do that, Mayor. You put your buns in the oven. But thank you very much, America. You have given us lots and lots of pleasure, certainly in the last few days. I never thought a billy goat, or was it a buffalo, could enter with such power, with such grace. Thank you very much, and may you give more humor to us in days to come. Thank you.
Before you go, actually, look, I hadn't noticed all the comments down the right-hand side there.
Well, oh yes, there's quite a few. Do you want to take one more? Otherwise, I feel we've neglected our friends.
We need education. Yeah, what happened to education? Why do people not understand how democracy works?
Oh God, not democracy again, Pete.
Well, that's the comment by Christina Longden.
Sorry, yeah.
I mean, I have to say that's one of my gewgaws as well, really. You know, particularly about political education. I mean, you never get taught how the political system in this country works. You have to absorb it by osmosis.
Does it work?
You know, so
the problem is that emotion tops reason so often, and if you build a myth as Trump has done, then people ignore facts. There's this kind of bias in favor of the myth all the time. But it's a great question, Christina.
It is, Christina. Maybe we ought to be doing a new curriculum for England. You know, because as
I totally agree, Christina. You know, people should be taught how our political system works in schools. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the question is, how come they're not? You know, and is it a question just that the politicians don't think that they're important enough, or is it that they quite like keeping people in ignorance?
Well, we'll end on this when people... Thank you, Julia. When anyone agrees with me, it's a very sad day. But may you all be safe in the times of COVID. Let's have another rant. You can come on Pandemicus and have a rant instead of these three ugly. And somebody said, can't you get somebody who looks a little bit prettier than the three of you? I can't. Thank you and bye now.
Bye-bye.